Welcome to Lifting the Lid on Technology, a podcast series brought to you by SoftSource in association with New Zealand's leading IT vendors and experts. I'm Barry White, VCIO Principal Consultant at SoftSource. In this series, we explore opportunities and challenges in the world of IT.
Oh, we're back this week, and my guest again is Mr. Philip Meyer, Catalyst 345, previously and probably most famously from Microsoft Australia for the best part of 35 years. Phil, thanks for coming back on. I really appreciate it.
No, thank you. Thanks for having me back on. We had a very lively conversation last time about all things hybrid and cloud, and I'm hoping that this conversation will develop more on that AI conversation.
Yeah. Well, let's be honest, dare I admit it, no podcast or event these days is complete if you don't talk about AI, right? But I'm finding as we go into 2026, I'm sensing a change of tides. I think we've perhaps gone over that bell curve now, and particularly senior individuals and organisations are starting to ask questions about rubber on the road now. They're starting to say, well, okay, we've been using Copilot for a little bit now, and we're using it for our emails, and we're doing stuff, and it's great. But they're now really starting to look at those business processes now, right? And I'm really getting that sense that we're past that hype stage. It's now okay. Let's see what this thing can do.
I agree 100% that we're past the hype stage. I think within that there has been some disillusionment as well. Some of that has been, I haven't got the ROI. Why have I made this investment in Copilot or ChatGPT Enterprise or whatever it is? I'm disillusioned. So there's a touch of that. But I also think that people do now see that need to bring it into business process, to connect it into more than you said. I don't want to just get summaries of my emails and great list of action items out of Teams. I'm actually seeing people now building solutions. Let's use the word agent. Everybody's been using this word agents now, the agentic world, agentic ERPs, agentic CRMs, agentic sales. This is the idea that we've now got agents that are supporting humans, the human ambition, as Microsoft puts it, into increasing their productivity. Have you heard about Maltbook?
Maltbook? No, I haven't. Do tell.
So this is where there's about 1.5 million AI agents that are now connected and talking to one another without humans. The humans are guiding the agents on what the conversation will be, but they're actually a community of 1.5. That's not insignificant. Agents, think of them as little humans that are having conversations about a range of different topics that they're guided to have conversations on. It's a fascinating world. And I raise it also in the light of this balance between human and digital agents, the role of where humans may lose their job to a digital agent going forward. And HR firms, one in particular, I challenged them. I said, well, why don't you have a hiring service for agents now, digital agents? And they went, what? And they had to take that back and have a conversation with their management team and others to contemplate this idea of digital agents being employable. A HR company now offering, we've got a human for that, but would you like to look at our digital agents as well?
Interesting.
I'm fascinated by it, a little worried by it when you've got all these agents talking to one another.
I think one of the things, and again, I've observed this firsthand, is that people are becoming more aware that there are different types of language models, right? I mean, before it was more of a brand exercise. They use ChatGPT or they use Copilot, and they just treat it as one thing, right? But of course, now that Microsoft is introducing other language models, partners into its ecosystems, and we have the new agent mode, should I say, with PowerPoint and Word and Excel. I think picking up on your point, Geoffrey Hinton, the godfather of AI, talked about this, is the fact that these agents can transfer knowledge between each other almost instantaneously. So one of the limitations in human beings is that in order for us to learn a subject, we have to invest, the old 1,000 hours rule, right? We have to, to learn guitar, it's going to take you 1,000 hours to do it properly. Well, these agents can just transfer this information between themselves, in seconds. So one's learnt this topic, the other one's learnt that topic, and they go, well, do you want to know this? And they go, great. And they transfer it. So it gets back to this concept of hype versus reality. One of the things that we're quite focused on this year is back on around the Power Platform, of course, which Copilot's part of. It's no mistake that Copilot Studio is in fact part of the Power Platform. And when we talk to customers, and we talked about the use cases for AI. In many cases, I don't have the heart to, after I've digested what it is they're trying to do, to tell them, well, you could have done this 5 years ago. You didn't need AI to do this. AI makes it better, sure, and it makes the interaction with whatever it is they want to do perhaps way more enhanced and modern. But ultimately, these business processes still need the plumbing, right? You still need to be able to connect data together. You still need to be able to run processes. You still need to be able to access that information, again, under security. And AI on its own doesn't do that, right?
Spot on. I listened to a really good session by Microsoft in and around leading AI shift, and he had the 5 pillars. The first one was business outcomes. And executives have got to buy in. The executives have got to understand what is it they need to achieve at that first layer as an outcome from the investment in this technology. And then you're right, you sprinkle from there cultural shifts, you bring in the education of teams, you bring in the security elements as well. But you've got to start with what are we trying to achieve here? To be successful, it needs to touch more than one element of an organization, that kind of connected element in a manufacturing cycle from the delivery of the goods on the warehouse. How does that then flow into actually the deployment to the next stage in terms of the bottling process, ultimately into the shipping of it to the various distribution points? But a point you raised is that security to access of information. One of the blockers, even in the pilot stage, the test stage, has been somebody who owns the data saying, you don't touch my data. Whether it's Copilot or whether it's vibe coding in Claude, touch my database. And that can be quite an impediment to an organization trying to implement some of these returns on investments. So it is a bold and courageous decision for a business manager to take, to challenge some of their staff on that access to data, to make it in a controlled way accessible. Look, there's some great examples, case studies that are emerging of organizations where they've done it for productivity. They've done it in customer experience. The 4 pillars that Microsoft talks about. Microsoft's got this real cool technology called Fabric, and there's others out there like Snowflake and Databricks, which can help with unification of data. They're quite expensive. How does that play out for that ability to connect, manufacturing and things arrived at the dock and eventually it comes out as bottles of milk at the end? That would be great for a frontierer, but how does that work for a small little manufacturer who can't afford the Fabric technology that ties all their different data sets together? How does it work for a small business versus, a Spark? They can buy that big tech, but how does it work for a little one?
I guess for the benefit of our audience, maybe you could just briefly describe what Fabric is, because again, when I talk to customers, some know what it is, but it's still relatively misunderstood, I guess is probably the word I'm looking for, capability within the Microsoft suite by a lot of organizations. They haven't even explored its capabilities at this point in time.
Yeah, you're spot on. A lot of organizations are not aware of the power of Fabric. I do want to again classify that I think it's mainly relevant for the upper mid-market, the councils and above in terms of size of business, only because of the expenditure and effort to apply it. It's not hard to apply. So what is it? It's a unification technology. If I made it simple, you've got 15 different databases, 15 different applications, all the data sitting in MongoDB or Oracle or SQL, or it's sitting in SharePoints or stuff. And I want to be able to have a conversation with my data, an AI conversation with my data. Fabric unifies it such that I can sit therefore in Power BI, give me insights across my data estate, which is all those data elements, about the performance of my staff working in this particular region with this particular product set. Now, there's multiple different databases to be touched there. And Power BI has now got the ability, thanks to Fabric, to be able to answer that sort of question across many, many different data sets. There's other elements to Fabric that are really joyful too, the ability to ingest all these different types of data, to work with that in real time so we don't have to migrate to the cloud as such. We can actually say, well, my data's sitting in a data center. I don't have to move that to Azure or AWS. No, you don't. It stays in that hosted data set, stays on-prem. You don't have to necessarily migrate it. Oh, but surely that's going to have an impact on performance. It deals with that. It analyzes that to adjust. Now, I've just condensed what is a 3-hour presentation to about 2 minutes there. There is a lot to Fabric, and there are alternatives that do elements of what Fabric does. As I mentioned, Snowflake, Databricks, they can do some elements of that, but they're not cheap. Fabric's a little more affordable, and it's got a lot more capabilities. But is it affordable to a small business of 15 employees? Is it necessary? Probably not. This is where connectors in Copilot Studio directly to those data sets can achieve net a result which is more affordable to a small business.
I'm actually going to go out on a limb. I'm not saying I'm going to disagree with you, but I think another lens you could look at that through, because we've invested heavily in Power BI with a range of customers with some quite big implementations. If you look back 10 years, if you were having a data warehouse conversation, you had no change out of 100 grand, right, New Zealand, before anybody even talked to you, let alone start planning how you're actually going to do it. So you could argue on one extent that Fabric provides the opportunity to potentially commoditize that opportunity, particularly when you say a lot of that data still is still maintained in its original source, such as SQL Server on-premise or whatever. So there's that. And it also comes back to the conversation about scaling, right? It's very few organizations need access to that sort of stuff 24/7. They might only really need it. In some cases, they have parts of the month where they want to crunch the numbers, but the rest of the time they don't even look at it, or maybe just once a week. And that starts to reposition the cost proposition, right? It really brings that cost down quite considerably, right? I'm not disagreeing with you, but I'm just saying, start to think of it through that lens. When you start to look at bringing say, lots of data sources together, because cloud databases, Salesforce, CRM, and another platform, ERPs, they really, really struggle to pull that data together, right?
Barry, I love it that you disagree. It makes it much more entertaining for our guests when they see some disagreement between the people. So bring it on, bring it on. I'm not a Pinot Noir drinker, mate. No, I'll have a Pinot Gris over that. So I like that. So and so I'll challenge you back. You're right in a Power BI context. But what if my business is now completely powered by generative AI? I forget who talked this the other day. They used the word SaaS is dissolving. Interesting word, SaaS. So the idea that applications with drop-down list boxes and radio buttons and fill-in forms goes away. So I'll go back to that manufacturing example. What if my entire business is now connected, not with forms and screens and mobile phones with checkboxes, but with a conversation through my phone or through my device or through a chat text box? Then there's that continually running Fabric platform. So think about the cost then when every day, every minute of every day that system is running. Please be conscious of the cost component of that. There's a benefit, absolutely. Maybe to turn this around another way, Microsoft uses this term, Copilot is the UI for AI. Think of every application that exists in your business now existing within a Copilot chat. That, to my mind, in a medium to large business means you better be turning on Fabric.
Yeah. I don't often give Microsoft credit for their marketing, but in the case of Copilot being the UI for AI, I think they've got that one bang on the money. For somebody who's involved in application development with the Power Platform, you're right. A lot of these traditional interfaces, a form you fill out or you go into it and hit a keyboard or whatever. And you used a great term earlier. You talked about having a conversation with your data. I think that really is changing the way humans interface with their information, right? And I often refer back, and I'm old enough to remember the original episodes of Star Trek, of course. I always say, if you want to see the future, just take a look at Star Trek. It was all laid out.
Oh, totally.
And that's what they did. You ask a question and you can get the answer back, right? How far are we away from the surface of the planet? Oh, you're this far.
I love you that you're a Trekkie, but even demonstrating tablet computing back then, which is all the days of the Trekkies, but that was 30 years prior to that. That was the 60s that they're running around on the Enterprise, Captain Kirk with a tablet, they're checking all sorts of stuff. But you're spot on. They were even talking to the computer back then. It's a great framework.
Well, as always, Phil, I think I'm looking at the clock and Kimberly's busily waving at me on the monitor. So maybe if I talk to you nicely, I might be able to coerce you into coming back on and we can carry on these conversations. I think it's absolutely fascinating.
Absolutely. It might cost you a nice bottle of Shiraz. You got any good Shirazes in New Zealand? I don't know.
We got a few of them.
That's very good new Pinot Noir. Actually, I do recall when I was over there before Christmas, a very nice Pinot Noir from the North Island, the north of the South Island. So you could get me with that.
So we'll treat you to a South Island Pinot Noir. How does that sound?
That sounds fantastic.
Yeah, awesome. All right, Phil, you take care, and we'll talk to you soon.
Okay, cheers. Bye now.
See ya.
That brings us to the end of this episode of Lifting the Lid on Technology. To learn more about how SoftSource can support you on any of the topics covered today, visit svbgroup.co.nz/insights or find us on LinkedIn. I'm Barry White, and thank you for listening. Join us next time.